apologies, I'm going to probably just throw a lot of names at you, but obviously it's been 2 weeks or so since we had a chance to just catch up with the fitness elements in the squad. Lucy Mahovo, only start with him because you said ideally he might be able to come back into training over this fortnight period.
Yeah, trained last week, did every session last week that we did, so really good to see him. I think the medical physical department done a really good job. I think when I looked at him last week, the shape of him, how he was moving looked really good. So it's now a case of just building up a bit of volume, a bit of workload. Obviously been out for a slightly extended period, needs to build up some consecutive days. So he looked really good last week, and it's good to have him back.
I know that's a very fluid situation from there, but what does that look like, do you think, for you now? Is it far too soon to even think about contention for squads and what have you?
Yeah, little too soon on that front. As much as I'd love to push it, I think there's an element of it just being reckless. I think he needs to, when you can turn some players around quickly, but I think when it's an extended period, you have to get the right workload in. So it's making sure that we do that and give him the best opportunity to get back and stay back and like you say, build up that just the training days and maybe some potential 21s match minutes down the line. We'll have a look at that as well.
On him, I'm sure when you came into the club, Neil and Ben would have told you about his breakthrough. He came through and he looked very comfortable at that level, stepping out of development football. So I guess that's another young player you and your coaching staff are very much looking forward to working with.
Yeah, and I watched a lot of him before I came in, to be fair, so I was aware before coming in. I'd seen him, and even from the bits I saw and speaking with some of the staff around there, that's the big bit that I look at him training last week, and he being out for that extended period. Of course, you're recovering from the injury, but it also means you can work on other things. And like I said, the guys have clearly been doing a good job with him because physically he's gained some muscle. He looks like a real athlete now. So. Credit to the staff that have done a good job, and credit to Lucian for the work he's put in.
Staying with defenders, Jack Stacey, how are we now in terms of, we all knew the concussion process he had to go through? Has he come out of that now and he's fully plugged back in, is he? Yeah, good news, he's back in training last week. Introduced him, built up his work, and he fully trained a couple of days last week and this week so far. So in terms of selection, he's available for consideration this weekend, yeah. Just one or two of the longer term ones, just where they've moved forward now in this sort of intervening period. Elliot Miles, Gabe Forsyth. Yeah,
both out in the grass, so they're both progressing. But again, I think similar. Elliot really early stages of being back out in the grass. Gabe as well, increasing the work that he does, and it's I keep saying it's a case of making sure that there's certain markers they have to keep hitting to move on to the next stages to make sure that they progress in a quick but safe, sensible manner as well. So, but both are doing well. Both are. I think what's really important for the lads is that they still feel like footballers and still, get up to speed with what we're asking them to do. So there's still a huge amount of football work that's done with them, whether it be sitting through videos, through presentations, through watching training. There's a lot of work that the staff will do behind the scenes to make sure that, we try and get them up to speed with what we're asking the group to do. So both have had, different levels and different types of projects and work to do that, will hopefully help them, reintegrate quicker when they're fit.
What about Mankwa Forson? I mean, you said initially when he did it, he's going to be out for a considerable length of time. How's that process looking? Because it's sort of been more or less a month since the original injury. Yeah,
still relatively early stages. So again, he's still in those kind of earlier stages. Still going to be a considerable amount of time.
And then obviously you've had one or two scattered here, there, and everywhere. The international, I appreciate one or two will still be in transit, but what are the initial reports? No issues there from the lads who've been out and about.
Yeah, touch wood, nothing so far. Most are back in. We're still waiting on two, so most were back in today training. So it was good to see their faces and have them back out in the grass, and really enjoyed the training the last couple of weeks since Blackburn. I think seen some real good signs from the group, and like I say, now we've got nearly everybody back. Is looking forward to getting back into the next game.
I'm assuming, given they only played last night, Sargent, who one of the two hasn't come back into the camp as his club boss. I'd imagine he'd been quite happy he didn't get kicked last night.
Yeah, that and the fact we were able to keep him, right? We haven't spoken since the window shut, so I think when you look at it, probably the best sign in the Championship. I think in terms of being able to keep him, and speaks volumes about him, speaks volumes about the group, the club, what we're trying to do, and delighted we're able to keep him. We've seen how important he is, and hopefully comes back in good health and everything good. The feedback we've had fine so far, until you get hands on and you see them, I think that's equally important as well.
I was going to get your reflections on the window, but just on him, you've said it again, just an answer there, how highly you rate him. it seems from, albeit we're a very long way away, that maybe he's not quite seen as the main man for his country at the moment. I know that's not your focus and what you're interested in, but does that surprise you that he maybe still has to, bearing in mind they've got a massive year ahead now, a home World Cup to look forward to, that isn't quite put himself forward, or is that just the nature of international football? There's a lot of very good players in his position. He's got that level of competition.
Yeah, of course aware of players in their squad. I don't know them in terms of any level of depth or detail. I think mine is knowing what Sarge can do, and I think he's the time I've spent with him, really, really high level. I think in terms of you see that in what he's produced in the game so far. So again, I think when you look at it, most international teams would welcome someone with his quality and his goal scoring record. So yeah, for me, all he has to do is keep doing what he does here, and that ultimately does all the talking for him. I think what people have different opinions, different feelings on certain things, but if he's turning up and he's scoring consistently and putting in performances like he has so far, then you'd be mad to leave him out.
Just one more on your international contingent. Ben Kraseni got a call up with Kellen with the 21s. He didn't get on the pitch. I think they won in Kazakhstan, didn't they? But with him, does that underline the potential that there is a player who's in and around an elite group of young footballers in this country?
Yeah, and Hunt as well. I think I thought he was excellent against Blackburn. I was really pleased with how he performed. I think he, obviously we had to manage him coming in pre-season. With obviously the injury he had at the back end of last season, but I think he's grown from strength to strength, and just his personality, I've really seen that kind of grow in the time we've been here. A lot more vocal, a lot more confidence. I think they're attributes that are going to be really important for him, and he thoroughly earned the call up, and that should be a driver to continue performing at such a high level for us. So yeah, that'll be the challenge, and that's what we'll be pushing him to do.
Yeah, I mean, you've that was my next question. What you like in his game? I mean, you've mapped out some of the attributes there, but when we saw it at Blackburn, is it that tactical flexibility? But again, he feels like he's naturally the attacking instincts. There was that one he went to the byline and crossed it. For Sarge, he clearly that comes natural to him, and that gives you something to work with in that area of the pitch, because you obviously need in those roles, I guess, to go both ways.
Top question. Got the detail in there. I think, look, you look at it, I think everything you've just said there, I think in terms of, he's able to build from deep, with his quality. I think he's then able to, join attacks late, the way he overlapped, underlapped, took, good positions up inside, outside the pitch. I think he's just his all-round game was very good, and defensively, and that. They're the bits, of course, elements to work on. And, I think when you look at it, some really positive signs so far. We have to now make sure he understands, when he performs well, why, what did he do, what does it look like, and then, challenge him to keep doing it consistently over, such a long season.
And is that challenge, not just for him, but any young player? I mean, he's 21 now, I think I had a look this morning, he's played 50, 60 league games, but you see across the game, the younger and younger are getting first-team exposure. His challenge now is to do that, to break out and establish himself and find that consistency in his performances. Yeah,
for a lot of the lads, I think that's what... whether it be age, whether it be, changing leagues, that's what we're chasing is consistency and consistency in doing the simple things really well. I think that's the big bit. I think, produce some outstanding moments, but you have to underpin that by, some really strong, basics to fall back on. And they're the bits I think, for young players quite often get overlooked. We chase kind of the wow moments, but, once you've delivered that, when it's not a wow moment, what does it look like? And that's, for a few of them, it's making sure that you do the simple things really, really well, with and without the ball. And again, I think, like say, Ben's still in the early stages of career, which for me is exciting. I think he's got so much to come, and he'll only get better over time if he keeps applying himself, if he keeps pushing himself, and we keep creating the right culture for him to, to have that confidence and to, go out and be himself. And I've seen that so far, and long may it continue.
You referenced this fortnight, even though you've had the internationals away, you've been very happy with maybe the response you've had from the group here. I was just interested how you and your coaches have used this sort of space away from the relentless game cycle. Has it allowed you to maybe just assess first 5 or 6 games, and if so, with that kind of space to sort of look at it maybe more analytically, some of the key takeaways for you in that block of 5 or 6 games?
Yeah, I think we do it game to game, but of course I think naturally when you're able to breathe at the end of a block, you look back on experiences, and we've definitely had a few in the opening games that in different ways will make us better, and that's the skill of every game for me, taking away what was good and what needs to be better, and that's whether you win or you lose. I think we're always striving to achieve the best version of ourselves, and those games will definitely help. I think they're bits that we can relate to and reflect on in the future. When we're in certain situations in games, be it with 10 men or against 10 men. It's obviously, things that we kind of know how to cope with and deal with, and bits that we can use again. And yeah, of course, we need to make sure that going into the next block that we're prepared and that we take those things forward.
You said after the Blackburn game that in terms of how you win and how you achieved it, that's validation for the players for a lot of the processes you've tried to embed in them. And is that, as much as you can talk about them to the players about that, you can work with them at Colney, it's those experiences in a game environment which can really accelerate the process of what you're trying to do?
Definitely. You can't replicate pressure. You can't replicate 20, 30,000 fans. You can't replicate 3 points. We try to take those places, emotionally and stress them like that. But again, I think it's completely different the second you step on the pitch, and that's the bit I spoke a bit about, the validation, right, of the work that we're doing, and the lads are heading in the right direction. And I think it's when I look at Millwall, I look at Middlesbrough, two of the frustrating ones. If we score when we're on top, I think the outcome of the game's completely different. So I think the fact that we did against Blackburn when we were on top, go in 1-0 up at half time, is probably a little bit of a release. And then naturally second half, when the pressure comes off them because they're a man down and they're behind, they've got nothing to lose, and we're chasing the win and need the win and want the win. The pressure shifts back onto us, and then naturally you get some nerves, some anxiety. The lads are human after all, so I think they're good experiences that will definitely bring the group closer together, that we'll use to keep pushing forward and making sure that we keep improving.
You didn't use him on the day with Pelle and Matson. I just wondered now, there's upsides and downsides, I'm sure, to having a 2-week break. I'm sure you'd like to crack on again after Blackburn because it's such a positive experience. But for him as well, a period to, moving club, moving country, on the pitch, off the pitch, that adjustment, I'm sure he's going to reap the benefit of that. But for you, is he one who could be even now dropped in like a Topic, for example, because his season started quite early with the European games he was playing? Where do you assess where he is in terms of his readiness to come into your first team?
Yeah, fitness-wise, he's good to go. He's obviously started early, good training minutes, good match minutes. So yeah, he's from a physical perspective, he's competing to start, as is everybody that we've got fit and available. So there's not a case of managing him from that perspective. I think it's more getting him up to speed with what we're asking him to do, what that looks like, and he's trained really well. He's trained really, really well the last couple of weeks, and like I said, I think he's someone that I'm really looking forward to seeing.
And in terms of the area of the pitch he's playing and coming into the Championship, I guess for him the challenge will be that intensity, the speed of the game. Not to denigrate maybe the league he's come from, but he probably will find it is a step up in terms of that intensity.
Yeah, I think, and the margins. I think that's when you look at the say every week, but the margins are so close in every game. You'd never want to predict scores and results in the Championship. I think it so difficult. So I think when you look at the intensity of the games, the programme's probably a little bit forgiving at the minute in terms of Saturday. We're not overloaded with games, which again will be a new experience for the lads when we get into it. But just the style of the game, the intensity of the game, the level, I think, just in terms of that. But again, I think we've done our work on him. He's intelligent, he's bright, he's adaptable. I think he's a really good all-round footballer. So I have no hesitations. He'll adapt quickly. And
that nicely leads us back round to the transfer window. He was the 12th, I think, and final senior edition. I mean, as you said, it was probably the one that you didn't actually lose. It feels like the biggest upside of the transfer window in Sarge. But just give us your overall reflections on that, keeping him, but also your business as a whole in terms of incomings.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I like to keep Sarge. I think that was probably the biggest piece of business we could do. And then, alongside that, I think we've done some really good work. I think, of course, it's going to take time to settle and for us to build. But, when you look at, the position we're in now with, lengths of contracts, with balance, with, the right blend of, people that are in, those kind of years that, the peak years with games under their belts, with young players that are going to improve and get better with, a bit of experience. I think, we've got a really strong squad that we need to now accelerate the relationships, the understanding how we play, the experiences we have together. And, like I say, with even in the early games, some of the foundations, some of the bits I saw, watching it back against Blackburn first half really excite me about what the group can do. And it's now how do we consistently hit that level? And that for us is the challenge in terms of, with so many new players, how do we do that? But really pleased with the business that we've done and what we've got in the building. Particularly,
as you say, capped by keeping, by common consent, certainly the best striker in the division. I mean, genuinely, when you first walked in the door, you must have thought you're probably going to lose him. So, what a bonus in terms of you as a coach having that type of quality player to work with now for these next few months.
Yeah, Yeah, no, look, naturally, I think, you know, yeah, I don't know how you replace him, to be honest, in terms of when you look at just his level as a player, but what he brings in the changing room from a leadership perspective, all the bits I've spoken about in previous interviews. I think, you know, he knows the group, he knows the club, he knows the area, he's settled. I think that, you know, you lose that, you're naturally replacing someone that doesn't know all those things and isn't settled. So I think there's so many factors, him as a pro, him as a player, and the fact that he knows the club and settled and, you know, is loved by the fans, I think is a huge thing for us to be able to do. And as I think it's, you know, credit to the people above me that, you know, in terms of, you know, the work that was done to keep him. I think in terms of creating the right culture of, you know, making sure that, you know, we did everything we can. And I think it like I said, it's a great bit of business for us to be able to keep him.
I appreciate the domestic win, this guys, thankfully, but is anything at all moving maybe with a Duffy or a Slimani? We know there's leagues around Europe and further afield are still open.
Nothing at the moment, no.
And then sort of finally really bringing it on the Coventry. I'm not going to ask you what you expect from them because you've made it quite clear you're pretty much going to give the same answer every week, but is it safe to say you probably could bracket them similar to Borough, you know, a club with the same top six aspirations?
Yeah, and I think when you look at it in quite stable, I think if you look at where them as a team, you know, teams go through cycles. I think, you know, when you look at it with changes and volume changes, etc., and they're you know, when you look at it, quite stable. Haven't made huge changes from last season, so they've got an element of, you know, stability, consistency. But I think, you know, it's a game where, you know, off the back of our away form, we're in a good spot when we travel. Performance-wise, in the last game was very good. So we should be looking forward to the game. We should be desperate to get out there and go and show that we're capable of hitting the level we did in the first 45 minutes, and you know, believing and showing that we're good enough to go and get a result.
Yeah, it's final one. I mean, is that very much because as you say, the start of the season, it seems like it's framed by these international windows, and between now and the next one, you know, there's Coventry, there's West Brom, Stoke, Wrexham in there as well, and obviously a certain team over the border. But this is a real period where you can pick up that momentum and can build it on from Blackburn, and then it feels like then you're rolling forward to get to that end goal that you're all hoping to get to this season.
Yeah, it's about accelerating it. We know we're not the finished article, but I think in terms of, you know, we want to, how do we turn large elements of positive from, you know, the opening games into, you know, rather than it being 30, 40 minutes into 60, 70 minutes, how do we increase that? How do we, you know, when we're on top, score goals and relieve that pressure? How do we, you know, make sure that we're hard to beat? How do we, you know, there's aspects that will continually be worked on, and you know, over the next 5 games that we'll keep building on. And it's, you know, how do we, like I said, accelerate and increase that? And you know, that takes, you know, largely it's the culture that we have, it's the, you know, the way we work, it's understanding how we work, and the lads are improving at that all the time because of the experience with pressure in games, but also, you know, the work that then goes on behind the scenes with video, with training, with individual meetings, all that only, you know, allows us to improve over time.
Cheers, good luck.
Appreciate it, thank you.